Tonight, exclusive details on the Attorney General's position on the stolen cash in the home of former Sanitation Minister Cecilia Dapaah. As Joy News learns, the police are set to extend the theft investigations to include the source of the money. We have the latest on the special prosecutor's investigations, plus President Akufo-Addo's appointment of Frida Prempeh as new Sanitation Minister.
This is Top Story with Evans Mensah.
And Top Story is always brought to you by Vodafone. The special prosecutor has in the last 48 hours taken the lead in probing the Cecilia Dapaah scandal following revelations that she had stashed $1 million and several bundles of other currencies in her house. But in the last few hours, Joy News has been obtaining exclusive details from sources at the Attorney General's Department, which is set to advise the police to extend their probe to include the source of the funds. The police has been investigating a case of theft of the monies and has today submitted a docket to the Attorney General. My colleague Papania Shale is here with that police statement that has been issued in the last few moments. Papa, we are learning today from the police statement that they have actually recovered some of the stolen items from the suspects, including the house helps.
Yes, Evan. So this is just a two statement paged letter, and it says that we're following a case of stealing reported to the police by Mr. Daniel Osei-Kuffour and Cecilia Dapaah, former Minister for Sanitation and Water Resources. The police initiated investigations into the case, arrested some suspects, recovered some of the stolen items, and arraigned the suspects before court. The second part says police have since forwarded the docket to the Office of the Attorney General and Ministry of Justice for review and advice.
Okay, so we know that indeed is gone, and we can confirm that because Legal Affairs correspondent Joseph Akable has been working his sources at the Attorney General's Department and joins me live. Joseph, what is the Attorney General's position on this matter? Is he limiting himself to the case of theft?
No, Evans. In fact, from what we understand, the AG and the office for that matter takes the view that this matter goes beyond the offenses for which charges have been filed. We know that so far it has been limited to the offenses of stealing and dishonestly receiving relative to the two domestic staff and the three individuals who received monies from them. The AG thinks it goes beyond it and actually takes the view that even at the initial level, when it got in touch with investigators, this should have been a matter that they should have seen beyond that particular issue and again should have had recourse to the Attorney General's office.
But when did the Attorney General know about this case? Because the police prosecutors filed this case some time back and have been investigating it for a while.
I mean, from what we understand, it was after the recent amended charges were filed. That is post the media publication. We know that the charge sheets, so far 3 charge sheets have been filed. We have independently seen 2 of them, one filed on the 5th of July and another filed on the 20th of July. And so what we were trying to understand from our sources within the office was whether they had even seen the initial charge sheet, which we've not seen. The office, in terms of the responses we got, indicated that they became aware post the 20th charge sheet that had been filed and the media publication that came along with it. We went a step further to try and verify the accuracy of that claims to see if indeed those charges were filed in court by police prosecutors or they were filed by the Attorney General's representatives. And the responses we got and documents that we have seen point to the fact that the investigator involved was a police investigator who investigated the matter. In terms of the prosecution, what was filed in court in the subsequent amendment, a superintendent of police was the one who was handling this particular matter, was the one who appeared in court to make the request for the amendment of those particular charges. And like we know for a fact now, there are 3 of the accused persons that are still in custody as we speak as well.
So, do we have clarity then when the Attorney General, based on our sources, suggests that the advice will be extend? Is a suggestion that he only got wind of this just when all of us got wind of this? This possibly will be either Thursday or Friday.
Evans.
Sorry, Joseph, I lost you.
Yes, Evans. I mean, that's the understanding that we have because the question that we placed was twofold. The first was to the effect that I mean, were they aware, and when exactly were the first charges filed? And secondly, when the subsequent charges came to their attention? And the responses we got indicated that it was post the last amendment that was done, which was on July 20. And so we went a step further to try and verify for ourselves who filed those charges. And what we saw points to the fact that it was filed by a police prosecutor, Evans.
On the police extending their probe to include the source of Cecilia Dapaah's funds, the OSP is already actively investigating that. Do we know if the AG is minded by the likely duplication of investigations?
I mean, the office takes the view that the nature of the working relationship it has with the police is quite different from the working relationship it has with the OSP. So that's the first point. Now, this point is explained as follows, that, for instance, the police is investigating a matter. More often than not, they tend to refer to the Attorney General for advice. That is the first point in terms of the explanation. Again, it's explained that there are some courts that the police do not have audience at. And so those are matters that they investigate, they hand over to the AG, then the AG instructs a state attorney of any rank to go over to the High Court to prosecute that particular matter. And so that is an example of what happens in those particular instances. The second leg makes the point that in terms of the range or scope of the investigation that is ongoing, it is to the effect that the special prosecutor's probe would have to fall within the ambit of the corruption and corruption-related offenses captured in Ghana's law books. And so that is how far the special prosecutor could go. It takes the view again that in terms of the police, it could go beyond that. So in the event, the investigation, which is targeted at ownership of the money, the source of that ownership, among other questions, if it's an earth crime that go beyond the mandate of the office of the special prosecutor, then it will mean that he may not be able to go into those particular matters. And so that is how come the office takes the view that because the document is now coming to it to render advice, its advice would be that the police should go beyond the issues of theft that is currently investigating to undertake a wide range probe that will look at the source of the fund and whether they were accumulated as a result of any other crime that were committed beyond what it is currently investigating. That falls within the mandate of the police generally to investigate and make the docket available for the next steps to be taken, Evans.
Joseph, thank you very much. Also, we're soon going to get the police also looking into the source of the funds as was found in the home of Cecilia Dapaah. So what about the OSP's own probe now? I want to bring in Elting Brobe, who has been working that angle for us, sings the story. Broke Elting, we've been reporting a lot on the search yesterday. What are we learning tonight about this ongoing probe by the special prosecutor?
So what I'm picking is that the officers that undertook the search in the property belonging to the former minister, the Ablimpe property, and of course, official resident at Cantonment, they are currently, scrutinizing some of the items they may have taken from the house, and they're going to, what they did yesterday, Evans, as we speak, and so. There isn't much happening on that front, but what we do know is that because some names were mentioned by the former minister, the OSP has started the process of getting in touch with these people and then to see how they can bring them in to question them. We understand that very close relations, including cousins of the former minister, some of them were named as owners of some of the money that's, is in question. And for that reason, steps have been taken to make the initial contact with them and then bring them in to question them. It is also unclear whether they will extend this to the husband of the former minister. But for now, the OSP is saying that anybody that's been mentioned by the former minister will be captured in their investigation. And that's what they are focusing on now.
Any clarity yet on what exactly they recovered from her home? Clearly, they did recover something.
It is so very unclear, Evans, for now. I mean, I've been trying to, understand the rationale behind the word significant as, put forth by the office or put forth by some persons close to this investigation. And they are tight-lipped on what exactly they found. Fact of the matter is that what they consider significant, according to my sources, is quite something worth, probing into further. But they are tight-lipped on whether or not they uncovered money or something bigger than money.
Thank you very much, Elting. And shortly, the new appointment made by the president tonight to replace Cecilia Dapaah. We'll get into that for you shortly. But I want to quickly bring in Justice Abdullahi, who is lawyer and law lecturer at the UPSA. Also joining us right now is Adam Senanu. He's a co-chair for the Citizens Movement Against Corruption and a board member of the EU Advisory Board Against Corruption. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your time here on Top Story. Let me start with you, Justice Abdullahi. So today we've been hearing a lot from the office, the Attorney General's Department, on the back of the statement from the police that they have now formally submitted this docket to the AG. They've been investigating theft, but the AG is set to advise, and that's their position, that they extend that probe to include the source of funds. What do you make of that move from the Attorney General's Department?
I think the inclusion of the Attorney General into this whole saga is to expand the scope of the investigation. Let's remember that the OSP's mandate is only in reference to corruption and corruption-related cases. And so what it means is that should the OSP encounter anything relating to stealing or any other thing outside of his scope, they may not have jurisdiction to prosecute. And so if it is collaborating with the Attorney General, I think the only basis for doing that would be that they probably think that there is more to the whole saga than just an issue of corruption. There possibly may be a lot more, including money laundering, including maybe stealing or any other bits that falls outside of the Attorney General. Of the Office of the Special Prosecutor. I'm certain that is the only basis and the only reason that they would involve the Attorney General's office in that. I mean, not necessarily to cover up or do the bidding of the state or the government, as some people are trying to portray. But of course, anything short of this would be very disappointing.
Adam Senanu, what do you make of the move by the Attorney General in this case?
Well, in most jurisdictions, you have multiple anti-corruption agencies investigating issues, and often they have to collaborate in order that you get, the best results or reports. Then it makes if there has to be prosecution, you're quite sure of the facts. So an expansion that enables other arms of government that have a role to play in picking information and whose responsibility or mandate under the law cover aspects that are potentially likely to occur or come up, I think it's a good thing. And so the expansion is good for all of us.
And Justice Abdullahi, I mean, the subject of the police themselves not finding it necessary and remember that they filed this case in court already, to trigger the other aspects of their work. At the time that they found this much cash in the minister's home, considering that she's politically exposed, and it had to take this long until the Attorney General now is indicating this is the move. Should the police themselves have found it necessary to trigger that next level probing to, goodness me, we found this money in the minister's home, we should extend it beyond theft?
So this is where the, yet again, disappointment of the Ghana Police Service comes in. The pick and choose attitude with which they approach the fight against crime is more revealing in this particular case. And it's really nauseating that we had to even come to this point when right from day one they had the benefit of the entire information and the circumstances of this matter. And it took media men to even bring this out, and they are still not even actively involved in the entire processes. And so, I mean, it tells a lot about the kind of police service we have, which literally would need somebody at the top trigger their processes. Otherwise, they cannot act, particularly when it is in reference to public officers from the highest point of view, i.e., minister and other persons occupying, maybe all those persons encapsulated in Article 71. It's quite difficult for the police service to act against them without any ignition from the office of the president or those above such offices. And so, unfortunately for us, I think it's been systematic up to this point. I was really hopeful that the coming into office of Dr. Dapaah was going to change that narrative, but it appears that very little inroads are being made on this front of our fight against corruption. That it is only fight against crime is only in the descending order, i.e., those of us at the lower of the realm are the ones who are targeted. But those above are free from crime, and they see no evil, do no evil, indeed talk no evil, until somebody else claims that they are indeed doing something evil, and so they should be somebody should go after them. And so it doesn't speak well of the Ghana Police Service. It doesn't speak well of our security agencies in general. But that is a negative narrative that we may have to deal with and possibly deal with vigorously. And it calls for, once again, for the entire appointment and promotion of the police services, possibly trying to delist it from the executive, make it more independent and act the way that it ought to act. This is yet another call for us to look into all those matters. But having said that, I think we should possibly maybe refocus the police service into purely investigating and fighting crime, and leave the prosecution to the officers that are designed for prosecution. I think if we're able to delink these two and pay more attention closely to the way these activities work, like it happens everywhere else in the world, the police do not prosecute. And if you focus on this aspect of it and take away the prosecutorial powers from the police, I think you may probably see the police acting more professionally by investigating crime and then relaying it to the officers that are in charge of prosecution, which would then do its work. I think it will help us to maybe reduce the narrative, the negative narrative on the Ghana Police Service.
I mean, so and I'm saying, but back to that point about now the police is going to extend into looking at the source. Concern about duplication of roles at all, with the OSP looking at source also already, and they've done extensive work and searching the house, retrieving some items there. Now the police is going to get into it, although belatedly.
No, in this kind of matters, when it relates to corruption, duplicating investigation is not a problem. Rather, what it does is it reinforces. It's like in research, we say triangulation, so other people come and confirm that truly, yes, this is the source. And it's important because sometimes these agencies are influenced by other interests that we have no control over. When Justice was talking about, this is a sorry part of, the report on the Ghana police, where they could have seized the initiative, looking at the facts, because many of us, once you see that the house helps have stolen $1 million, they wouldn't be stealing 1 million out of 1 million. There had to be much more sitting somewhere that we're picking this from, and assuming that nobody would notice. So the logic was there. But having raised it, I remember other cases where even when we have reported, so I remember Martin Pebu and I went to follow up on the Akonta mining thing in the environment, in the forest thing. Nothing had been done after 2 months of public outcry, and we're told because nobody had formally lodged a complaint. So we went back the following Monday, the two of us filled the forms. That's last year. Nothing has come out of it. So sometimes even when the formal complaint is lodged and investigations, have started, you don't get to hear anything about it. And so there is a real problem, and we ought to be looking at that. With the OSP, because we put in timelines, every 6 months they have to report on everything they're doing, there's compulsion. And perhaps we need to be looking at that at all the other anti-corruption agencies as well, making sure that the laws that give them their powers compel them to be responsive to the citizenry, and not just quietly, make sure that the issue is no longer something that has been talked about. There's no action, there's no feedback, and that tends to feed into the disillusionment and the frustration of citizens.
And as we stand tonight, there's a lot happening as far as this case is concerned. The OSP has jumped into this already, and then now we're having the police also going into this. And substantive ministers have also been appointed to, this particular ministry to fill the gap that she has left behind. But to you, Justice Abdullahi, as far as this case is concerned and traveling the long haul, we forget that this started off as a case of theft, and the suspects are still being investigated. There's a suggestion there that we should also be mindful about the status of that particular probe and the suspects involved, including protecting them possibly, because they may be, victims or being victimized as a result of whatever we've heard. Yesterday, there was a strong push for that. Is it necessary, as we focus on the cash that has been stolen from the house and the minister's involvement, to also pay attention to what is happening to the suspects involved here, as in the house helps who have been picked up and been investigated for a while?
Indeed, Evans, I would rather pray that these suspects, the prosecution of these suspects, rather be halted, and a proper interrogation of them had, because I'm sure they could provide more useful information to the ongoing investigation regarding the minister's conduct than they being prosecuted. They probably can be used as witnesses in this whole saga, because they probably saw more, they heard more, and let's remember that the stealing took place not within a day, or it took a long time for all these events to have happened. So they have more information than possibly the ministers would be willing to give out. And so it would be my strongest recommendation that their prosecution be halted at this moment. Let's listen to them. Let's know what they saw, what they heard, what they witnessed, and possibly, if it is useful, to have them as prosecutorial witnesses, to use them for that purpose, rather than using them rather than prosecuting them at this moment. Because if they have more useful information for us, they may be willing to give it out if it will lead to the prosecution and then maybe a retrieval of some additional more funds or resources from the minister than having them in jail. We get nothing by having these people in jail if they can give us more useful information. It's part of the plea bargaining system. We can adopt that approach towards these people than having them behind bars.
Adam Senano, you agree?
Well, yes, I think I agree. I would even go beyond that. I think your original question, that therefore there is a certain value that they bring to this particular investigation. And so we should be cautious because depending on what they know, you may have other people with certain interests thinking of harming them. And so, yes, not just that we should consider them being part of the witnesses on the prosecution side, but also let's make sure that there is that kind of protection being afforded them, that kind of attention being paid, because the kind of monies we are talking about, and perhaps the knowledge or information they have about who came, who went, who did what, perhaps even having to carry some of those bags, you never know, means that you ought to be careful, because before anything happens, anything untoward happens to them. So yes, let's consider how else we can use the knowledge they have, but certainly let's be cautious. Let's afford them the kind of protection before we are faced with something we knew could happen, but we did not prepare and make sure we protected them from.
Adam Senanu and Justice Abdullah, thank you very much for your thoughts on this developing story. And today, in the last couple of hours, we've heard from the presidency with a statement signed by the Director of Communications announcing the appointment of Honorable Frida Prempeh as the Minister for Sanitation and Water Resources. The President of the Republic indeed made the appointment, and now is one that we expect should go through. She takes over from the Cecilia Dapaah, who resigned over the weekend on the back of the scandal we've been talking about. And she is the Member of Parliament for Tano North currently in Parliament, and she is the serving Minister of State at the presidency, and she takes over from Cecilia Dapaah right now. Also, that's not the only appointment that has been made by the president, and also there are two further appointments made by the president tonight in consultation with the Ministers for Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration, and also Roads and Highways, respectively. The president has also appointed the Deputy Minister for Roads and Highways and Member of Parliament for Efija East, Mavis in Kansa Bodu, as Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration, and the Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration and Member of the Parliament for Tabale Sanguli, Honorable Thomas Mboba, as a Deputy Minister for Roads and Highways. So changes there, but the focus has been on Honorable Frida Prempeh, who is a Minister of State to the Presidency, who will take over from Cecilia Dapaah. I want to bring in the former Executive Secretary of CONIWAS, a coalition of NGOs in water and sanitation, joins us right now on the appointment of Frida Prempeh as the new Sanitation and Water Resources Minister. Patrick, you worked extensively with the resigned minister, Cecilia Dapaah. Now we have another minister appointed today by the president. What do you make of the appointment of Frida Prempeh?
Yes, thank you very much for seeking my opinion. But first and foremost, we would like to appreciate the President for considering yet another female minister for the sector. Water and sanitation being very unique. When it comes to men and women, we have seen the women give some extra passion to water issues. But what we expect of the new incoming minister is to continue having the passion that a person who will succeed in this ministry will need to have. Beyond the role of a minister and just you are a worker, you need to have that extra passion as a woman, as a mother, to be able to succeed in this ministry. That's the first thing we expect. The second thing is to recognize that the priorities remain the same. The priorities for the sector, and then the priorities of the president in seeing Ghana as the neatest country in Africa, they are still relevant and they are still pertinent and they are still on the table. We expect the new minister to actually take on this task confidently and to try to learn to understand where the old minister started and ended and how to build on that rather than thinking of completely new structures and approaches. And also the capacity to work with the sector agencies, particularly Ghana Water Company Limited and Community Water and Sanitation Agency, that you cannot to give them the free hand and the political support to be able to build on some of the things that they had initiated under the previous minister that are still ongoing but needs to be completed. But more importantly, the sector has reached a stage where we need some bold, very drastic reforms. I think this minister was just at that stage where she was considering comprehensive reforms to open up to see how do we make it more vibrant for the private sector to participate and also to make it more accountable and to also make it in a way that will be more pro-poor. I think these are the things that are on the table that the new minister will have to deal with. The good thing is she will have a lot of support from the Parliamentary Select Committee on Western Housing, and I believe trying to actually engage that subcommittee will be very relevant for her in terms of what she can register as achievements during the tenure. These are just my immediate thoughts for now.
Great to have them. Initial thoughts on this, considering that this has just been confirmed in the last couple of hours. And if you're just joining us tonight, the Sanitation Water Resources Ministry has a new minister. She is Frida Pempe. Until her recent appointment, she was a Minister of State at the presidency, and she will replace Cecilia Dapaah, who resigned on the back of the scandal involving the $1 million found in her home, together with other bundles of foreign currency. We're watching this space very closely as we await a formal advice to the police, prosecutors, as far as how to approach the investigations and the prosecution of the theft case, which they've already been investigating. Today, they've sent a formal docket to the Attorney General, and we are working our sources to get the very latest for you. News Night in a minute.